changes to start moving in the right direction. If we've got the money for a 3.9% COLA, and we've got the money to give market wage adjustments in various places and other places that are not as acute in need, and then we have the room this year to start taking some incremental steps in the right direction. And this budget doesn't do that. This budget needs to start making a little more of a commitment to mills. We're not. I mean, I don't think anyone's asking for, at least I don't hear that, a wholesale adaptation and boom, we're all mills and the revenue goes somewhere else. But start making some incremental changes towards reliance on mills more and reliance on jail revenue less. The revenue may still come in, but now you have extra revenue that you can use for targeted improvements here and there. That's an example. The second example is a little more revenue in order to get a market wage adjustment, to keep dispatchers, to keep detention officers that are trained, that it costs a little bit to keep them and it costs a whole lot more to replace them. Those are the incremental changes that you have the ability to make right now with this year's budget, because this year's budget we actually have a little bit of extra revenue, and that's not happening. And so I'm a little frustrated because, yeah, maybe we can kick this down the road one more year, but and maybe the impact of Lewis and Clark County's jail opening is going to be less than everyone fears, but there's going to be an impact. And then if we're looking at a Carbon County jail, I'm sure it's not built tomorrow. Maybe it's 2 years down the road before it's built. But we have to be, if we have a long-term plan, if we have a 5 years out goal of where we want to get, this year, this budget is the perfect opportunity to take some incremental steps in that direction. And we're going the other direction. And we can't just say, oh, we're going to trust the public for a mill levy. The school district's going to do a mill levy. We know they're going to do a mill levy. And the public is in this county is not in favor of repeatedly passing mill levies to say, increase my property taxes. That kind of overall big picture, make incremental steps towards a goal and work together, it's frustrating because this year we have the chance to do it and we're not doing it. And I'm worried about the cost we're gonna pay down the road. We're gonna look back and say, gosh, we should have done things differently. Thus endeth my speech.
Any other public comment? Tim?
Tim with Redoubt News, just real quick, I have to concur with our county attorney on one point that he made, pretty much everything, but in the budget process for the last 15 years that I've been following it, the draft process is really hard to get the full picture in order to understand where things are headed. Here just a few weeks ago, a full discussion was made. We asked for a copy of what was being discussed, and it took some doing to get a copy of that after the fact. So again, looking forward to transparency, helps you guys get the job done as well as help the public make sure that they know what's going on. Thank you.
Any other public comment? So we'll close the hearing and move on to the decision to adopt the fiscal year 2020 county budget.
I think at this point, everything that's been discussed can certainly be, I think what we need is working group for a part of it. There's some things we can illuminate, which I think we should have a discussion. But in the meantime, we are required by law to adopt the budget today. So with that, I would move that we adopt the budget as we have it, as presented.
Is there a second?
I guess I've got a couple of questions before we go any further. So Debbie, tell us, where is there room in our current budget to provide more for our sheriff's department? Is there?
There isn't,
Okay,
unless you deplete all your PILT funds.
okay.
And then nobody can come the rest of the year and say, can you help us? Unexpected things go up, printers, copiers, equipment to do our jobs. not for the dollar value they need.
Is there enough there to at least balance their budget, the almost $23,000 that they're short now? That they don't have to cut
Well, that's
Quarter
what
deputy salary.
Brandon at the last little bit. There is some savings in some of the staff leaving. Those savings that we aren't spending right now, we'll get them through. They are balanced, didn't even touch their cash reserves. I don't have a magic rabbit to pull out of my hat.
I understand that.
And cut sheriff's office, who other staff do you cut? I mean, it's across the board.
I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
It's across the board. So who do you decide
Mhm.
all the positions that need cut to save, to give to those that are still here, putting overtime in,
Mhm.
working more hours than they need to? It's gonna come down to a mill, a permanent mill for the sheriff's office. They're gonna need it, if nothing else, to offset their operations. People keep saying they want their safety, what are they willing to pay? I don't have other options. That's the legal way, I guess, for us to pay. And we can't keep up with Lewis and Clark and Gallatin County and be stuck in the middle. We're gonna have to keep up and do like for like and find ways to generate that. If that means our taxes go up, unfortunately, I'm a taxpayer too, my family's a taxpayer. It hits us all.
Debbie, I also have a question. Is there any money taken from the revenue made in the detention center to use anywhere other than public safety, law
No.
enforcement?
No,
Thank you.
it's specific to the public safety fund to operate all their needs,
And just those needs.
and just those needs.
Do we have 25,000 in PILT that we can transfer, that we can take out of PILT and put in the sheriff's office, so we don't, because if we cut this deputy, it's gonna cost us twice as much to get one retrained.
Oh, I think there were some items that you had talked about funding, veterans burial, indigent burial, that you were talking about maybe not needing this year. Not sure what the sale of the hospital, how the ambulance, and some of that was gonna work out, if you needed to give money for the ambulance fund. So there's some, I think there's some unknowns is there as well, that if we need to, it could be done.
But is the question that there's a cut to a deputy? There's a vacancy, there's not a cut to a deputy, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, can I guess yes and no.
Yeah.
Because the problem is you cut 22,000 out of our budget this year, you know, we have to come up with that next year. It's not, we're gonna be able to hire a quarter of a deputy for a year. The other issue is we tend to have a lot of vacancy savings throughout the year because we have so many people leave, and I agree with that, and Debbie helps me out with that all the time, and you know, how we make that up in our funding. But I'm a little concerned about what's happening at the federal government level with the Bureau of Reclamation contract as well. And Lewis and Clark has the same concerns, so there might be some issues happening there and some cuts that are gonna trickle down that, so it is cutting a deputy. Yeah, we could make it up for it in vacancy savings, you know, with 22,000, but if I hire that person, is the funding gonna be there next year? Because I had to cut it this year, most likely it's not, I'd have to find that money somewhere else. So I would call it cutting a quarter position off is what you'd have to call it.
I mean, I guess we've asked you to start your year with a balanced budget, and already we've put you in a deficit because of some mistakes that we didn't anticipate, right, that were made.
Yeah, and one of the other questions was with jail revenue was absolutely my mistake when it got, and I just didn't see it until Debbie sent it back on her paperwork. And then I'm going, well, what is that? Well, it looks differently on ours, and that was the state jail revenue. That's my mistake, I own that one. There is another revenue in there of $11,000 that we did discuss, that, it's not a check coming back, that's the Zerker payment that was in there, so we cut that out of there. So after we make those cuts and adjustments, decrease the mills to from the 37.39 or something to the 36.08, it left us at the deficit. So, and then, what do you call it, the 11th hour, here we are, making changes, and we've got to trim 22,000 off, so.
Debbie, what was the increase in value for the mills for the sheriff's office, aside from the lost mills? What was the increase just in the value of those mills this year?
It was like 35,000 or something, 36.
Yeah, an
Okay.
additional 35,661.
35 what?
Additional revenue of 35,661.
35,661. Thank you.
What is the amount of PILT money that we have currently?
At the end of June, there was 574,000. And because we don't know what it is yet, we're guessing the low four-year average of 630,000 anticipated this next year.
And do we have a number on how much of that we have committed?
I don't have my PILT worksheet, but your last worksheet, I think, showed 657,000, 58,000?
628, does that sound right?
Close, right up in there.
And was all of last fiscal year spent, the 574,000, was that all utilized?
Well, that's the end of cash. I wouldn't say that was utilized. That's what they had in reserves. But part of that has to do with the final payment of the arrangements they had down on Beekman turn lanes that they had loaned when the contractor went belly up. So some of that they got back, which is part of some of that increase, 100,000 or something like that. So they have a little more this year with that. But normally the balance is about down to 300,000.
One thing we don't have on the agenda is PILT allocations. So if we do want to have a discussion about using PILT to balance a budget, which is not something we've used PILT for in the past, we can certainly have that, but we need to have it on the agenda. And then what we can do is ask Debbie to do a budget amendment. We do those every quarter anyway, it's part of doing business. So it's something we can talk about, but it can't be a part of today's budget.
Mhm. Yeah,
This is Corey, I have a question on
Maybe we
that.
need to have that discussion then.
Corey, yeah. Go ahead, Corey.
So does this current budget include use of PILT for any line items? this expenditure report?
I believe it does.
Okay, I mean, if it's part of the budget, you can amend in your course of your adoption and discussion, you can amend it. If it's already included in the budget. If it's a separate deal that has to be done separately, then Commissioner Robert's right. But if you're already allocating pelt in this as part of your budget, you're probably okay to make an amendment. I guess the other thing, I did look up the statute last night. The deadline for your budget is the first Thursday after the first Tuesday in September, or 30 days after receiving your mill valuations, whichever is later.
And that is today.
No, the first Thursday after the first Tuesday. So it's Thursday the 5th is your deadline.
Debbie, can you
Or
step in
within
on
30
that?
days. And we got them 30 days ago.
I don't have
Yeah,
one
so it's
memo
the
that
later.
doesn't
It's
say
the later
whichever.
of either 30 days after you receive your mill valuations, or this coming Thursday.
What's the statute number, Corey? I have my law book in front of me.
It's like 7-6-4005, somewhere in that arena. Somewhere between 4001 and 4010. It's on the right-hand page. I can't remember the exact statute.
You're not taking us back into September or October though, correct, Corey?
Taken. Say again. I didn't hear all that.
Last year you had tried to tell us we could amend, or we could adopt the budget in October. You're still talking about this immediate time, just within a day or two, correct?
No, I don't think that's what I said last year. I don't recall the exact conversation, but the statute that I read last night says the deadline is the first Thursday after the first Tuesday in September, or 30 days after you receive your mill valuations, whichever is later.
It doesn't. No, it says. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, so,
Or within 30 days. It's
or
one or the
within
other.
30 days, so it's either today or whatever that would be, yeah, Thursday, the 5th. In which case, we haven't posted, so, I'm not sure that that would be wise, but it's a solid budget. We've gone through this process starting, in March? If we wanna do a budget amendment, we can, after having a lengthy discussion about changing the use of PILT to balance budgets. We have a long-term plan that Bill Jarocki helped with. We can certainly also talk about that, but I do think those things should be on an agenda. We can call it a working meeting, we can put together a working group. But we can't just do it off the fly, it has to be agended.
So there's a motion on the table to approve the budget as presented. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion, but I really do believe we need to have that working meeting so that we can get this sorted out. It's not fair for these guys to start their budget in a deficit. And I wanna make sure that we can do everything we can for them.
motion's been made and seconded to approve the budget as presented. Is there any further discussion? I would say that I would approve the budget, but I think that we need to have the meeting with the discussion of PIL. In order, because I think we need to at least supplement their budget with 25,000, because like Brandon said, that's something that, by the time you get done looking through 99 pages of revenue and 115 pages of expenditure, I don't know how you're expected to hit everything. And I think that's what happens, is we get flooded with a bunch of stuff at the last minute. But I think it's pertinent that we approve the budget.
And on that last minute thing, Debbie, didn't you have this posted in the clerk and recorder's office for 2 weeks? You had it up there for anybody to review. So what you sent out to us was the last minute updates, but not necessarily, what was it you sent out to us? Just
What's
what
in
you
this
had
book?
there, that was in the clerk and recorder's office for 2 weeks prior to today.
Just some minor corrections, 2 mathematical errors, last minute, like today, last minute with Brandon, things that got missed in discussions.
And that was more communication than anything else.
So I have a question.
So I think it's important to note, for us to understand, all this information, the 99 pages, that was available for 2 weeks. It wasn't a last minute thing. That last minute's been repeated today, but it is not accurate. Thank you, Debbie.
I have a question then. The email that went out, and I printed it all and took it home. I received Friday at 4:30. Was that the exact same thing in the book, or you said there were a minor change?
I didn't say that, no,
Oh.
but yeah, that paperwork you're holding in your hand has been in the clerk and recorder's office for
Exactly
2
the
weeks.
same.
No, there were minor, and correct
So
me
there
if
were,
I'm wrong.
and just a few, just those changes on a page-by-page basis
Right, so there were some minor changes.
in the book.
Right. So the book is slightly different.
No, it's the same as that, because as these were fixed, that was done, this was fixed. So this matched that when I sent it, because what was final and sent was at the last minute to make sure it was the same as the book. So it's been printed for 2 weeks, so if there was a change in the book, it was already in that report that was emailed. I just had it printed off in the book, so page by page that was changed was just a page, so they're the same.
So when were the minor changes?
Yes, I'm more confused than when I started.
Because you said that there were minor changes.
This book has been up there. If there was a change, it was a page to fix a mathematical error,
Which was on Friday is
which
what
was
was
on
sent.
Friday or before as I worked on it, to make sure it was all done.
So what is right there, which is what was in the book, is different from Friday because the
No,
changes
because
were.
Friday is what's in this book. They were both updated. Before, this book has been up there for 2 weeks.
I understand.
Okay. All the pages have not been replaced, just some of them,
When?
when I did updates
And that was when?
over the 2 weeks.
So within
So
2
I did not
weeks-
send this to everybody until I was sure all the updates were in the book, so I could send that out and I didn't miss any. So I did them, but they've been sitting out there for 2 weeks
the update-
online, but they have been in this book as the adjustments have been made.
So what she has in her hand,
Should match this,
what was in her hand is Friday.
right? Because I had till Friday to get this stuff in the book, make sure it was all right.
I don't understand it, that whole.
It's like editing a book, there's always edits until you print the final. That's the final,
Which was Friday,
which is Friday.
not 2 weeks ago.
This is the 30th.
Mike, this is getting a little bit badgering. Let me just clarify. Debbie, can you please tell us, has the book been in the clerk and recorder's office for 2 weeks?
Yes, it has.
Did you make minor edits
Minor
to it as
edits.
you found mathematical errors?
And
Okay.
replaced a page
And
as
then-
needed.
And then you sent out the final on Friday, so anybody who wanted to could print it out for themselves rather than.
And it would be the
go
same
to
as what's in
clerk
the
and
meeting that was
recorder's office.
emailed Friday.
Okay, I think it's pretty clear. Thank you very much.
So I guess we'll call for the question. Is all in favor of approving the budget as posted?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to our 10:30 at 11:30.
Can we sign the resolutions to that effect? I think there's two. Katie, do you have the originals?
Yes.
Thank you.
All the attachments.
Commissioners, I'm gonna hang up now if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Corey.
Thanks, Cory.
I would definitely volunteer to be on any budget working group that's working on this throughout the year.
All right,
Pass this down
we'll
while
take you
I'm
up on
my
that.
pen.
Okay, take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
I think one other clarification as we're signing, the, I do recall Corey's memo that he wanted the excess money, not excess, the repayment to go to paying for that computer program. That repayment is from where he was overpaid salary, where he was paid by both National Guard and the county, but the law only allows it up to 120 days per year. So he's repaying the excess back to the county where he was overpaid. And I think that's a pretty easy budget amendment we can do. So I would support that.
10:30, Mike Conkey, BLM Spokane Hills Communication Site Lease Agreement.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we have up Spokane Hills a beacon that the Highway Department, Aeronautics Division wants to get rid of. They want to give that tower to Broadwater County government. And the reason for that is we have repeaters up there for law enforcement, fire, and public works. And we have a lease agreement with the BLM. We have 2 copies here. Each copy needs to be signed. And we've been negotiating this for some time. And let's see, any questions?
Does your lease agreement have the month of August put in that first line?
Nope.
Okay.
We didn't get electronic copies. We just got hard copies. We have to cross that out and put today's date in there and then sign the back of it.
Okay. When I noticed too under section 3 that we cannot lease that to any commercial customers or tenants.
That's correct. Cannot do that.
Okay.
Can we lease space on it to any commercial people?
No, we may not. All we can do is have public safety, emergency communications on that site. If we're gonna lease that site or they wanna put commercial operations on there, then the Bureau of Land Management has to do an EIS study to affect that.
Right.
This is an existing facility. We've had repeaters up there since 1999. And since then, the Lewis and Clark County Sheriff's Office has added one. They call it their Spokane Hills Beacon, or repeater. That's for the rural fire district. The FCC licenses we have are all in the name of Broadwater County government. That's fire district, fire and ambulance. That's the Sheriff's Office, and that's the road department. And the one they have for Lewis and Clark County is in the name of the Lewis and Clark County Sheriff's Office. Those are public safety frequencies. No, they do not want to lease that site for commercial use.
Okay.
There's a little bit lower on down, there's several sites down there that are actually privately owned. That chunk of land is actually owned. McMaster sold that to those communications facilities. So it was like Northwest Energy, BLM, the railroads, MRL, and then there's a couple telecommunications companies down on those 2 sites lower. But those were put in place before McMaster's donated that land to the Bureau of Land Management.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Also noticed there that by the October 15th each year, we have to provide them a list of all the tenants and customers in the facility. Is that something that you're gonna do, or who's gonna take over that responsibility?
We can make that part of my responsibility if you want to.
Okay.
Or we can have Capital Communications do that.
Okay.
They're the ones that keep our licenses up for all those frequencies that we have.
Okay.
And I think Gary would like to do that. I haven't talked to him, discussed that with him.
All right. Just, I guess, so we don't overlook that.
Sure, absolutely. They just want to make sure we can add more public safety repeaters up there, but we can't add anything else.
Right. I think as far as for discussion at a later time, as we do discuss as a commission, whether we're gonna keep that beacon lighted or not. And how that's gonna go, that's for another time.
That's for another time, correct. Right now, the power is in Northwest Energy's, power is in the name of Aeronautics Division. They want to transfer that meter usage jobs. I sent an email out, you probably got copies this morning, seeing what estimate that would be, what the cost per month. They just recently changed, I think about 9 months ago, changed everything from down to LED bulbs, which is very highly efficient. And same with our radio repeaters and stuff are efficient. We also have a backup system there that has solar. It's already up there, it's on that plan, it's on the back page, there are solar panels.
Was there wind power as well?
I don't think there's any wind power, but there are some backup batteries, kind of a UPS system, or, backup system batteries. Gary, Capital Communications, services that site for all of us, for both Broadwater County and Lewis and Clark County, as well as takes care of the licensing and stuff for the FCC licenses.
All right.
Is there any other discussion, any other comments?
This is a great opportunity. I move we sign and proceed.
Now, second.
Motion been made and second to sign an agreement with Bureau of Land Management for the lease on the communications tower to run from 2018 and it expires in 2048, I believe.
That's correct, December 30th, 2048.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. You got the ones you want signed, Mike?
Oh, yes. Any of those that I gave you, you can sign. Can you sign this one here? Any of those would be fine. And then I'll scan it, and we'll have a copy of it. And of course, we can mail it, and they want us to mail it to them rather than electronic transfer.
Why did you staple both ends of this?
Oh, I don't know. She did that. That copy up there did that. I didn't want you to get into it. Secret documents. We got budget items in there. For detention.
How many batteries do they have for backup?
They just have just regular batteries that are 12-volt batteries.
Oh, just regular ones?
Just regular batteries in a series hooked up. It charges up during the day, Trick charges it. Then if they lose power, then it draws off those batteries over the solar. Of course, at night, there's no solar, so that's what the batteries are for.
How often do they replace those then?
I don't know, the cycle's probably about every 5 years. We have a contract with Capital Communications to do all that for us. Take care of that, there's a regular cycle. When they want to recharge batteries, they usually give us a budget item.
I have something small before we move on, if that's okay.
What's that?
I'll
I
get
have
it
something
there.
small before moving on to the
Okay.
next agenda item, if that's okay.
I can't tore it. Okay.
Okay.
So, thanks, Mike. This is something we already voted on, probably a good month ago. I was able to recuse myself, thanks, Daryl. But I do, just to be on the safe side, want to read my statement of disclosure, just so that there's absolutely no confusion. And I've done this throughout the process, but there's no conflict of interest between my volunteer work for Broadwater County and citizens and my duty as a county commissioner. My involvement with my community is comparable to other county commissioners. Throughout Montana, I receive no personal monetary gain from working with Broadwater County Development Corp. Townsend Area Chamber of Commerce, Auxiliary, Rotary, Montana Board of Crime Control, Youth Justice Council, Area 4 Agency on Aging, County Board of Printing, or any other organization that offers services to the citizens of Broadwater County. I do not own a business or such property. I do not rent or lease any property or assets to any business. The best way to be an effective county commissioner is to be involved. Montana Association of Counties, MACO, has committees that support this work. Economic Development Committee, Health and Human Services Committee, among others. MCA 762527 and MCA 95112 support commissioners' involvement. My husband is Executive Director of Montana Business Assistance Connection, and MBAC is Broadwater County Certified Regional Development Corp. And our federal economic development agency, and has been since 2004. In fact, Broadwater County has been involved with and complied with the Public Works and Economic Development Act of 1965. Broadwater County, which is before I was born, Broadwater County contributes an annual equivalent of 1 mil to receive services by both EDA and CRDC, as is required for that assistance. That 1 mil equates to less than 3%, it's actually 1% now, of MBAC's operating budget. That 1 mil is not paid to Brian Obert. MBAC derives its funding from many sources, including EDA, CRDC, interest-bearing revolving loan funds, grants, state contracts, and membership from local businesses and governments, city and counties, including Lewis and Clark and Marr counties, Augusta, East Helena, Lincoln, Townsend, and White Sulphur Springs. But the benefits to Broadwater County are far more than that mill. There is no conflict of interest. Thank you for indulging me in that, just to be on the safe side.
Yes, Tim?
Just a quick question, Commissioner Obert, that disclosure today, does that relate to the adopted budget? And that's why it's brought up today out of.
Yeah, anything with that was actually adopted previously, but I
Understand, but
just want to be on the safe
for
side.
today's meeting.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so next, Mike Conkey, MSU School of Architectural Design Contract for Wheatland Emergency Service.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we are interested in using the services of Montana State University School of Architecture. They have a community design center over there, and they did some work for us earlier in first of this year, first of June. 2 graduate students came here and did some conceptual design work for an ambulance building for Broadwater County. Just a concept, in case we want to go get funding for that building. We can do the same thing now down in southern Broadwater County. We're interested in building a southern Broadwater County Emergency Services building, which would include a law enforcement, like a substation, some bays for the Three Forks Rural Fire District in that area, and the ambulance service. And this is a contract that's put together by the university. I'd like to have you look at it. And I think there's a cost they're going to charge us this time around, $2,500. I don't have that money in my budget. I think you talked about one time about using some money. You had PELT money in a
The turn lane,
turn lane. Yes, I'm not too sure what that is.
yeah, that's correct.
Any questions on this?
No.
I think Corey had a bunch of questions earlier, and they addressed those in that memo. I emailed it to you, also gave you hard copies this morning in your desk to look at that. I think they've addressed all those.
Yeah, I think all those questions you answered satisfactorily, at least from my standpoint.
Those questions were mainly dealing with, are we gonna have a seal on our plans from an architect? Well, these are just concept plans. We're not doing plumbing and electricity and all that kind of stuff. So it isn't a requirement.
It's just a schematic drawing.
Yep.
And they'll create a 3D model, will they?
Yep, just like we did, and they'll come up with some cost estimates like
Right.
And then we'll use that material to go apply for grants, like USDA Home Rural Development grants, or anybody, railroad, or anybody that's got money.
So then the latest email you sent us was asking whether they wanted to do that this fall or do it in January. Is there a preference on their part, or?
They've assigned 3 students to us. We're gonna meet with them this Friday. If you sign this agreement, I'm gonna meet them down there at Three Forks, look at the lot. I'm gonna bring them up here to the detention center to talk to the sheriff's office. And then we're gonna meet with them the following Friday. We have an arrangement with the emergency services group that's been meeting down in Three Forks with the sheriff's office, of Three Forks Fire, ambulance service down in that area. And they're gonna come to that meeting at 4 o'clock. That's down there in the ambulance building. I think, what's the date on, 13th, 14th, I don't know what date that is.
I think so, too.
Let's see, that's gonna be down there on the 13th, 4 o'clock, Three Forks. Those students are gonna come down to that. If you do not sign this, well then they'll take those 3 students and assign them to a different project. Just a graduate project for them. One of the assignments they have is to go out into the community and actually design something for a community that needs to be done, some deficiency somewhere. And the purpose of the drawings is then the community can use those to go out and ask for grants, sell it to the community, and as well as to build relationships with the different partners. Now, our stakeholders are gonna be Sheriff's Office, Fire and Ambulance in that community down there.
Well, I think it's a great way to, and an inexpensive way for us to accomplish all those things. And apply for those grants. I guess I would move that we sign this amendment for services between Broadwater County and the University of Montana School of Architecture.
I'll second that motion. This is a great project, Mike. Thank you.
Motion been made, second to approve the contract with the MSU Community Design Center, is that what they are?
Yes.
Broward County for the Emergency Services Building in the Wheatland area. Is any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Contracts are stapled on the top only.
Well, it was stapled on top, but it was also stapled on the bottom.
I don't know what that machine did. Blame the machine.
Blame the machine, yes.
Excuse me, so the cost, Mike, excuse me, Mr. Chair, is coming out of the turn lanes then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just concepts and ideas, but something we can actually take a look
I know you're running behind schedule, that's all I have, Commissioner.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, you bet.
Thanks, Mike.
I'll scan these a little bit later.
Okay, next up, the Elkhorn Restoration Committee support change of scope.
So I've been giving you guys ongoing updates on the change. I was going to bring you an email and I forgot to print it. But we do have Al sitting here. Al, would you give an update? You are by far the brains, one of the brains behind this and the most knowledgeable. I'll butcher it. Would you give us an update so that everybody understands what's going on and what the benefits of the project are?
Sure. The Elkhorn Restoration Committee has been active in the Elkhorns since 2012 as a citizens collaborative group. We've worked with the Forest Service, the BLM, and a lot of private landowners about trying to restore the Elkhorns from the standpoint of a fire resilient community and support of the wildlife habitat components out there, since it is a wildlife management area. And so we've been very active, worked with the Forest Service over a lot of projects. We, as a group, we intervened in some decisions by the agencies. We have signed on as an amicus, a friend of the court, for a BLM decision. So we've been very active out there. Several times the agencies have come to us and asked us if we would be interested in expanding our area of support. And we said no, we came together to do things in the Elkhorns, and that's kind of what we did. Well, the national agency priorities are such now that we're not getting much work done in the Elkhorns, quite frankly. I mean, there's fire and fuels work. We're not getting the wildlife habitat component work done. And so we've been faced with the issue of, well, what do we do as a collaborative group then? Do we stay active? Do we go into recess? Or do we just go away? So through these past probably 5 months now, we've been engaged with a discussion about expanding our footprint of collaboration. And so we, as a committee, voted unanimously, all of our membership, to expand our footprint and include now the Big Belts, the Elkhorns, and what's called the Divide Country. So that basically takes all the National Forest land from Interstate 15 over to the Spotted Dog Country. So as a collaborative, we have decided to do that. And as part of that, we are working with the Forest Service on a large landscape proposal that we have submitted our application to go through the first review process, and we should know the answer on that Friday. If we are selected, then we will go into competition at the national level. So our proposals then will be, we'll have the opportunity to go into a lot of detail over what we want to do in this. And those will go to a national level committee for selection. They'll select up to 10 projects across the country. And if that happens, we will be in line to pick up quite a bit of funding. We being the Forest Service, they're the agency, they're the lead agency on it. We're working in support of them. If it goes like it did previously, then these projects are 10-year projects, and we will be heavily involved in a lot of activity from Spotted Dog to the north end of the belts. So our Elkhorn Restoration Committee no longer exists. We voted to change our name. We are now the Big Elk Divide. So you take the big off the Big Belts, the elk off the Elkhorns, the Divide off the Divide Country, put it together. That is our Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee. We kept restoration because it's important to us for the work we do. And so that's what we did. We're asking all the counties to give us a letter of support for the kind of work we do in the landscape now that we're working on. Since it's much bigger, we will be involved in 5 counties. And we want those so that as we, you almost get a step ahead, as we prepare for our second round of information going to the Washington office for consideration, we want to build a profile of support so that they see the kind of support we have. So this is kind of an informational thing of letting you know what's going on, but also we would like a letter of support to that, to the collaborative, and certainly to the Forest Service, the Helena Lewis Clark National Forest, in support of this kind of work. Nothing, I mean, there's nothing specific. We have, you know, big lists of projects and all those kind of things and stuff, but that's we're asking you to be conceptually supportive of what we're doing with this landscape approach. So, questions?
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Okay.
So to remind you guys, the amicus brief that we did, we got a grant with the Mako Forested Counties Coalition to support the logging project on Johnny Crow. That was connected with the Elkhorn Restoration Committee, now to be the Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee. We had a second friend of the court support for Iron Mask, and when you go to the Forested Counties Coalition meeting, one of the things that's talked about is the thing that's had the most success fighting the anti-anything to do in the forest, the single stamp at the 11th hour letters, has been active collaboratives. So this is just an extension of our, or a growth of our collaborative. So with Al here, do you guys have any questions for him or for me? Are you supportive of changing the scope to this larger collaborative and working on a letter of support.
I would be yes.
Yes, and we'll include the Forest Service in there as well, is that in this letter?
It would be addressed to them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, we'll have a letter next week, Al, and get that to the group.
Thank you, I'll let them know.
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, 10:45, Virgil Binky Chair, Trust Board, present request for grant for Silos Area Master Plan.
The trust board approved the grant request. It was corrected in a meeting for, not for the 45,000, but it was over what the plan was. So that was adjusted in a meeting and we moved it forward. The other option we had was to send it back, ask for a correction, and that would have taken time. So that's why it went that way. Speed things up so you can get things moving forward. The other issue which was discussed was the liability and the lease on the campground. And with that, I would like to have Steve McCullough make the presentation on the reason, because he's more familiar with it than I am. So Steve?
Virgil, before
Yes, ma'am.
we go to Steve, what was over the plan? You said that you only funded a portion because it was over
Yeah, in other
what the
words,
plan was?
it was over what was requested
Requested
for the,
for
for the cost to do the job.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, if we'd have gone for the 45, there would have been loose cash. And so we wanted to make sure there was adequate funds to cover the request.
Virgil, is that based on the money that they've already
Right.
donated to them, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So somebody would have asked the question, so we tried to move it so it was done correctly. I have one other suggestion, that when you get ready to go to contract, make sure you have avenues to the funds that other groups have done, so that when the contract requires payments and this sort of thing, you have the funds to take care of it.
So the request was only for 32, it wasn't for 45,000,
Correct.
correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Debbie will read the decision of the trust board.
You have a copy, but just to read it for the public. The Broadwater Trust Board has voted to approve a grant for the Citizens Action Group for Silos area for $32,000 on the condition that the current contract between Broadwater County and BOR be canceled or renegotiated. Broadwater County Trust Board supports the need for a master plan at the Silos Recreation Area, urges the commissioners to approve this grant.
The elephant in the room is, why would we put a condition on it? And we're back to that, the trust board received a request like this years ago, and we funded it. And Kim thinks it was about 54,000. We covered half of that. And sure enough, we had local support from Bureau Rec, said, you get this study done, we'll get some improvements out there. It went back to Denver. We funded it, did the study. Study came back with Goose Bay type improvements, electricity at the sites, new gazebos, showers, really nice stuff. We did the study, got it done, got it completed, went to Denver, and Denver said, the Bureau Rec lease with the county is the county's responsibility. Got no money and no improvements. Here we are, how many years later, we're going to do the study again. And the old thing is, do the same thing and expect a different decision. it'd be a waste of money. So that's why we put that condition in there. You need a partner with Bureau Rec. You do not need to be the lead agency on the cost out there. That's the number one part. The second part is that lease puts all of the cost and liability, and liability is the big stuff, on the county out there. If the boy that was killed on the north end of the lake, when a stored ramp fell on him, that could have been Broadwater County. We had stored ramps out there also. They've since been replaced, but that could have been our responsibility. Because of the lease, it's our county taxpayers' responsibility. It's a terrible lease. So we put the condition in there. Questions?
So is all the liability out there right now is the county's?
County first. They'll name the Bureau Rec, because that's even a bigger pocket than our taxpayers.
So if we cancel or get out of that lease, how does that hinder the citizens, does that hinder the trust board or the Citizens Action Group from participating out there as far as funding goes, or the translation with the BOR, or?
No, I think it enhances it. I think it puts them in a better position to negotiate with the Bureau of Rec, and the Trust Board would like to participate in that. If we're gonna get some enhancements out there, we wanna help.
So what would the county's function be?
You're the facilitator on it. We're strictly the secondary vote that authorizes trust fund funds. The county technically is the lead organization in this. The study, you're doing the study. You're signing off. Bureau Rec is gonna do it. It's your study. It's Broadwater County study.
The Broadwater County also would be basically a pass-through organization for other grants or funding, correct?
Absolutely.
So what would happen to that if the county got out completely? We would no longer have the concessionaire contract.
You'd reduce your exposure substantially, 100%. That facility generally runs in the red, so you'd quit putting tax dollars in there. So it's a win-win to get out of it. We feel negligent from the trust board standpoint. We entered into that agreement. We had the county enter into it so the trust board could put the bay in. We excavated the bay, we put the boat ramps in, we put the boat slips in, we did all of that. We had you take on the lease. We anticipated the lease, we'd give it back in 2 or 3 years. It was not given back. The lease was not canceled and given back to Bureau Rec. So we put you in this position, you need to cancel it and get out of it.
It was 2003, is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Been a long time.
Yeah, so things have changed, and it makes sense for us to look at renegotiating that lease for sure.
That's your call. That's why our initial motion was to get out of the lease. If you can make Bureau Rec a partner in this and remove your taxpayer liability, may not be a bad thing. And probably be good from the Citizen Action Group position too.
So we renegotiate, we would not be responsible for, right now, we're responsible for weeds and roads. And we're paying a power bill. So does that all go back, that would all go back to BOR, or we would just completely walk away from the system, or how would we be involved as far as us and the Citizens Action and the BOR goes?
Actually, Citizen Action has nothing to do with this. It's the county and BOR. You go to the BOR and you say, we're either getting out of the lease entirely, or let's renegotiate it, and you put in whatever you'd like to do. You can say, we'll do the roads, but you pay us for it. They're your roads. We have a weed district. We'll spray the weeds, but you pay us for it. Liability is a Bureau Rec facility, it's Bureau Rec liability. Personally, I would get out of being the concessionaire. That way you don't have to sublet being the concessionaire. I'd get out.